Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Walala. The Forest of Death was filled with the remains of spatial fragments. After Yi Bei entered, he could even see spatial fragments streaking through the air from time to time. As for the living trees, they were frantically shaking their vines, making rustling sounds as they welcomed Yi Bei's return. But what really shocked Yi Bei was that after entering the Forest of Death this time, he could clearly feel that the space here had expanded, turning into a boundless territory. The area was many times larger than it had been before. The most inconceivable thing was the number of living plants on the ground had increased again. In fact, Yi Bei could even clearly sense that there were a large number of living trees among the spatial fragments that were constantly streaking through the Forest of Death. When those constantly waving vines collided with the spatial fragments, they wouldn't cause any damage. This living tree has evolved quite well. In the Forest of Death, we'll put in new space fragments, and then they'll transplant themselves into those space fragments. Their numbers will continue to increase, and when there's enough time, they'll probably be countless times stronger than the mutated beasts of the snake civilization. They might even be able to crush all the creatures of the snake civilization. Yi Bei mumbled as he flicked his tongue. Who? Then he activated his spiritual force domain and found that he could still communicate with and even control all the living plants here. He was completely relieved. Walalala. Immediately after, Yi Bei didn't waste any more time. He curled up his body, and countless vines from the living trees surrounded him. Soon, those vines formed a huge ball. Just like before, Yi Bei was wrapped up in the sphere, and he was plunged into darkness. Who? At the same time, he quickly retracted all of his spiritual power. End quote. System, how long will the evolution take this time? I've defeated the Flood Dragon and the three-bodied civilization this time. I have a feeling that more trouble is coming. Whether it's the Blackwater Behemoth or the Space Snake, there's no movement yet. End quote. After entering the tree cocoon, Yi Bei didn't rush to evolve immediately. Instead, he communicated with the system in his mind. I'm not sure about the approximate time. The progress will depend on the degree of fusion between the host's body and the worm dragon gene. However, it will definitely not be less than 3 months. As for the other civilizations, this system is temporarily unable to find out. 3 months. Yi Bei muttered to himself. It would be great if they were still on Earth. 3 months wasn't a long time. However, it was completely different in the centaurs. End quote. Host, you don't have to worry at all. The Forest of Death has been completely sealed, and the space has been transferred. The entire space is now stored in the depths of the void and not in the centaurs. Even if some powerful creatures attack the centaurs, they won't be able to hurt the Forest of Death. You can rest assured about this. End quote. End quote. Of course I know, but all the mutated beasts are in the centaurs. End quote. Yi Bei narrowed his eyes slightly. End quote. In fact, you can let them enter the Forest of Death as well. There are a lot of space fragments here, and the Forest of Death is now as large as Earth. Even if the living tree is 3 million meters tall, it's still very small in this space. When the mutated beasts enter the space fragments, the Forest of Death will leave this constellation and be absolutely safe. End quote. The system suggested. Forget it. Let's not care about them. Now that they're strong enough, if we keep hiding, it'll be hard to train their abilities. I'll just start evolving. This time, Yi Bei's gaze suddenly became extremely determined. His voice was extremely decisive. All right, the system replied. The only person it cared about was Yi Bei. As long as Yi Bei was alive. Even if all the mutated beasts died, it would not matter. At most, he would just need to spend some time to build it. After Yi Bei made his decision, he immediately felt a majestic energy flowing wildly through his body. Then, his entire body lost its power and couldn't move at all. His consciousness became extremely clear at this time. Not only could he observe everything inside and outside his body, but he could also observe the Forest of Death and even the Centaur constellation outside. Buzz. However, at this moment, Yi Bei had focused all of his mental power on his body. After the evolution process started, he could clearly see those genetic chains crazily moving in his blood. And in his body, the original genetic chains were constantly shattering under the impact of those chains. He could not feel any pain in his body. But as he evolved, Yibei's consciousness felt extremely refreshed. The first day, the number of times Yibei's skin shed had reached 100. His skin had become extremely shiny, and it felt like it was made of metal. In just one day, his aura had increased by more than 10 times. The next day, the number of molting had reached 500 times. And on this day, Yibei was shocked to discover that his body had undergone an unbelievable transformation. For protruding things had actually grown out of his own abdomen. Apart from that, be it his aura, strength, or length, they were still increasing rapidly. The third day, the number of times Yibei shed his skin had reached 1,000. His guess turned into reality. As expected, fur claws grew out of his abdomen. Those claws were also covered with a layer of scales, similar to the worm dragons back then, but if one looked closely, the edges were more distinct, and the overall feeling was much more perfect. Finally, I have arms and legs. This day was extremely meaningful to Yibei. After all, with these claws, Yibei's operations in many aspects would become very simple. The 10th day, the 30th day, almost every day, Yibei's body was undergoing rapid changes. The flood dragon's bloodline and genes were simply too violent. After entering his body, they began to proliferate wildly and endlessly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. After that day, Yibei could clearly feel that all the genetic chains in his body had been broken. Yes, all of them. Then, under the guidance of the worm dragon gene's berserk gene, the gene chains in his body began to reassemble. Moreover, Yibei could sense that the assembled chains this time were more than 100 times stronger than the worm dragon's original. In fact, Yibei was certain that if he succeeded in evolving this time, if he saw a flood dragon again, Yibei, could crush it with his eyes closed. When Yibei and the mutated beasts all began to evolve, the entire centaurs became extremely quiet. If it weren't for the violent energy that lingered in the universe after the war, no one would know that a terrible battle had taken place in this star constellation not long ago, and it had almost destroyed the universe. At the same time, in the depths of the universe, the life forms that were rushing over were also shocked by the changes here. End quote. The tri-body civilization failed. They were conquered by the creatures in the galaxy and surrendered. They even gave their bodies to the creatures as a shelter. It's unbelievable. End quote. A space snake, after detecting this matter through its spiritual force, flicked out its tongue and muttered to itself. That flood dragon also seems to have failed. That's a creature from a high-tier universe. I don't know how strong it is, but even we are definitely not its match. Do we really have to continue? The other space snake spoke. End quote. If we want to make our race stronger, we can't miss this opportunity. Those creatures seem to be starting to evolve. If I'm not wrong, evolution will put them into a dormant state. At that time, their spiritual power will be at its weakest. End quote. End quote. But don't forget that the universe tree is still there. End quote. End quote. That universe tree is still very small and has only just begun to grow. If possible, it would be great if we could take the universe tree with us. If our race could obtain the help of the universe tree, just think about how powerful we would be. End quote. Countless space snakes were discussing madly through their spirit energy. Other than them, it was the same for the machine race. And NBSB, whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the process of their discussion, it didn't affect their progress towards the centaurs. In fact, after a month, there had been a huge change in the centaurs. The three-body life form used its own protective light film to isolate all the mutated beasts inside. Other life forms in the universe could not detect the truth of their situation. The evolution of ordinary mutated beasts was completed in just 3 days. A month later, hundreds of billions of mutated beasts had all finished their evolution. On this day, Caesar, Blood Moon, Gu Yu, Golden Lion, Wang Wan, Queen Ant, all the apostles were gathered together and discussing the future development path of the snake tribe civilization. End quote. After devouring the worm dragon gene, the king must have evolved as well. This has happened several times on Earth, and each time it lasted for at least 3 months. So before the king returns, we have 2 choices. 1. Complete all the basic construction in the centaurs. 2. The living tree is in space, and the space fragment is in his body. We can go back to our planet and build it. End quote. Guyu was the first to speak, her voice slow. Guyu still looked like a human. However, her eyes had become much colder. As she evolved, her strength as an apostle had increased tremendously. If she were to be placed in the era of human civilization, she would definitely be a godlike existence. End quote. This suggestion is not bad. Now that everyone has completed their evolution, their strength and intelligence have greatly improved. We have also integrated all the technology of the beast god civilization, the tri-body civilization, the snake civilization, and the human civilization, but many of the basic facilities are still very simple. This is not in line with the current state of our civilization. End quote. Wang Wen flicked his tongue and expressed his thoughts. In fact, Caesar was the most suitable person to handle such matters. After becoming an apostle, he had always used his outstanding intelligence to deal with all the big and small matters of the snake civilization. End quote. Everyone, I don't think there's a need to discuss this. Our foundation is still moving to the planets in the space debris. Now that the entire Centaurs is our resource, the first thing we should do is, of course, move all useful resources to our homes. When our homes can't fit them anymore, we can expand the space area, move to new planets, and continue to develop. End quote. Caesar opened his mouth and went straight to the point. The development of any civilization was selfish. It was the same for any living creature. The Centaur constellation was so big. In addition to the three-body life forms, there were countless planets, countless rare minerals, rare metals, and even some incredible food. It would be perfect to use these resources to develop their own planet. Good. Caesar is right. End quote. Yes. End quote. Golden Lion agreed immediately. End quote. I support Caesar's idea. It just so happens that all of us have obtained the ability to move freely in space. All of the creatures of all races will go to this universe to find resources. In addition, we will set up a management organization for the snake civilization. Under the calculation of the intelligent creatures, we will rebuild a currency system and convert the resources we find into numbers. End quote. The Blood Moon said. After these guys had evolved to this stage, their intelligence was too high. They quickly discussed what to do. Hence, after the meeting ended, the entire snake tribe civilization began to move. At Yi Bei's behest, the living tree opened up the fragment space. As long as the mutated beasts wanted to, they could go back and forth at any time. In the time that followed, almost every day, countless mutated beasts rushed into the universe in search of various resources. At the same time, there would be endless resources being transported to the planet in the fragment space every day. When there were enough resources, the mutated beasts multiplied even more crazily. No matter how many of them there were, they did not have to worry about food. Moreover, through reproduction, they could continue to create a greater power for their own race. Why not? Even the pitifully small number of humans. When faced with such an opportunity, they were also crazily making babies. Test Tube Baby. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Clone. In order to increase their numbers, the humans used all sorts of methods. They even used all sorts of resources in the universe to implant memories into the newborn babies and use hormones to accelerate their growth. In just a few days, the number of humans had actually increased to 100,000, and this number was crazily increasing every day. However, the current number of humans was not worth mentioning when compared to the entire snake tribe civilization. Of course, some humans only had themselves to blame for such a day. The other creatures in the snake civilization did not sympathize with them at all. While Yi Bei was evolving, the snake tribe civilization had once again entered a period of rapid development. A month and a half later, the snake tribe civilization's technology was ahead of the three-body civilization in all aspects. The battleships that were destroyed back then were continuously being manufactured in batches, and in terms of weapons and size, they were many times stronger than before. Every planet in the space fragment had an endless supply of resources. Furthermore, during this period of time, the number of creatures in the snake tribe civilization had tripled. On Earth, all the apostles gathered in a newly built conference room. End quote. Right now, all the planets are full of resources. If this continues, there won't even be a place to put them. Although the number of creatures in the snake civilization has increased significantly, we're facing a serious problem now. We have to start increasing the number of space fragments and implant more planets. Also, we have to speed up the connection between the spaces because of the special characteristics of some races. At the same time, due to the difference in space, the communication between different living beings is also very limited. If we do this well, our development will speed up. After the meeting started, Caesar stood up and was the first to make a suggestion. With the technology we have now, how long will it take to connect all the space fragments? The Ant Queen said. The ant tribe had always occupied the moon. However, with the recent development, the number was too huge. The entire moon was not big enough for the ant tribe to live on. Opening up the spatial fragments and expanding them at the same time were the most important things that the ant tribe was facing. There's one thing you need to take note of. It's not opening up. With our current technology, we can't stick all the dimensions together. If we do that, wouldn't it be a huge space fragment? We can only build a passage in different spatial fragments. To put it simply, we can build a bridge between two different areas. Caesar said in a professional manner. It will only take about 7 days to finish this. End quote. Then, how about increasing the area of the space fragment? The Ant Queen asked. End quote. I asked Morpheus before coming here. All the equipment is ready. He's cut countless small space fragments and even made a large number of space rings and storage bags. Within 3 days, all the space will be increased by about 10 times. This means that each space fragment can be implanted with a planet. End quote. Caesar's eyes were full of excitement. He had seen with his own eyes how the civilization of the snake tribe had expanded from a small island step by step. With the current technology and strength, how many years did it take? This speed was something to be happy about and proud of. That's great. The queen ant cheered. In the following time, in the snake civilization, those mutated beasts were still crazily plundering all kinds of resources in the universe. After all, it was related to their future wealth. No one dared to neglect it. At the same time, Morpheus and his team were also constantly trying to open up a path to the spatial fragment. A week later, everything was done. In the living tree, the space fragments were all connected together, extending in all directions. All the creatures of the snake tribe civilization could communicate freely. In addition, due to the mass production of spatial storage products, all the mutated beasts were rich enough. Basically, each mutated beast had at least 2 spatial storage equipment. Just as the snake civilization was developing rapidly, in the Forest of Death, Yi-Bei's mental power domain allowed him to clearly observe everything. System, what is the current civilization level of our snake tribe? Almost all the planets in the space fragments have perfect infrastructure. Different types of creatures have strange architectural styles and are full of artistic sense. In addition, wealth and technology have all been improved. In terms of weapons, the warships that are built now can easily cause a fatal threat to 3-body life forms. Although his body was evolving, Yi-Bei had discovered something during this time. During the process of evolving into a flood dragon, the system did not disappear, and he could still communicate with it. End quote. The snake civilization is now a level 10 civilization, the same as the 3-bodied civilization. Although your technology can cause a death threat to the 3-bodied civilization, they can do it too. It's just that their numbers are far less than yours. However, in terms of biological level, the snake civilization has also improved greatly. They've reached an average of level 7. Among them, the apostles of the host have all reached level 10. In terms of physical combat power, the apostles, it can easily fight against 3-body beings. Very good. Yi-Bei was very satisfied. This trip to the Centaur constellation had completely exceeded his expectations. End quote. If this continues, it won't be long before the entire universe belongs to the snake civilization. End quote. Yi-Bei said with some confidence. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his mind power domain that had spread throughout the entire Centaur's constellation immediately noticed that something was wrong. At that moment, the space snake and a group of mechanical lives had just stepped into the territory of the Centaurs. The space snake wasn't very big. At a glance, it couldn't be compared to the flood dragon at all. However, Bei could clearly sense that the man's body was exuding an extremely terrifying mental power. In addition to the space snakes, the large group of mechanical life forms had also broadened Bei's horizons. Those mechanical lives were completely different from the robots Bei had expected. It was as if they had really come to life. The smallest one was thousands of meters tall, and the largest one was tens of thousands of meters tall. Its entire body was made of metal. There were even eyes on the metal. Those metals could even transform into various shapes. When flying in space, they still relied on the energy ejected from their bodies to move forward. Their speed was also not slower than the speed of light. Transformers. Yes. The moment Bei saw them, this word immediately appeared in his mind. However, it wasn't the kind of transformer that he had seen in his previous life. This time, it was a completely magnified version. Even from so far away, Bei could clearly feel an inexplicable threat. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. End quote. System, were those the legendary automatons I saw just now? Bei could not help but ask. They are indeed the legendary machine race. The system replied without hesitation. Hiss. This time, even though his body had lost all feeling, he still felt cold sweat all over his body. The automaton race. Just by hearing this name, one would know that this was an incomparably huge race in the universe. But the concept of the true machine race was something many creatures couldn't distinguish. At that time, the moment Bei saw the machinery race life forms, the system had provided him with a large amount of information. The more he read, the more shocked he became. Those machines were not so-called intelligent life forms at all. In other words, it was very clear. Humans were carbon-based life forms. Most of its body was made of water, and it had its own intelligence and its own way of thinking. And the automaton race. They were metallic life forms. Most of their bodies were made of metal. They also had their own sentience and their own way of thinking. The automaton race. The most terrifying aspect was the aspect of reproduction. Their way of reproduction was not through mating, nor was there a distinction between male and female, but through devouring and splitting. To put it more clearly, when a mechanical life randomly found a barren planet and devoured metal crazily, when the number reached a certain level, another mechanical life could be split out of its body. Then, the two mechanical lives split again. Or even, mechanical life forms could even devour the metal bodies of their own race in complete division. Therefore, to many races, the machinery race was an existence that couldn't be killed. The universe was too big, and almost all the planets had countless metal resources. If they couldn't kill all the mechanical lives in one go, as long as one mechanical life was still alive, they could split into endless mechanical lives. Such a terrifying way of survival was already terrifying enough. But, as a member of the machine race, they had another terrifying aspect. Technology. The technology that the automaton race beings grasped was even more unimaginably powerful. Because their entire bodies were made up of various metals, they had the absolute advantage. They combined technology with their lives. It could freely transform its body into various weapons. Battleships, artillery shells, sports cars, fighter jets. They could also transform their bodies into intelligent computers or intelligent life forms, thereby improving their logical thinking by tens of thousands of times. When Bei finished reading the information provided by the system, his eyes couldn't help but widen. End quote. These mechanical lives are simply unkillable. Even if we can devour them, we can't devour all the metal in the universe. Furthermore, when we devour them, metal appears in our bodies. They can also devour us and revive the machinery race. End quote. Bei murmured to himself. This time, he knew that the snake civilization had finally met their true match. Then, system, in the universe, what level of civilization is the automaton race at? Bei couldn't help but continue to ask. End quote. Although the machinery race is very powerful, their life level and civilization level are not high. They are all level 12. The only scary thing about them is their rapid reproduction rate. At the same time, their traces can be found in any universe and cannot be destroyed. In fact, the advanced civilizations already have ways to avoid or deal with them. End quote. The system answered again. Only level 12? When he heard this answer, Even Yi Bei himself found it a little hard to believe. According to the information he had obtained previously, in the entire universe, the strongest creature had reached level 30 and the strongest civilization had reached level 18. Then, a level 30 life form and a level 18 civilization. What kind of race was that? How terrifying would they be? Just thinking about it made Yi Bei feel an unprecedented sense of fear. Although he was about to evolve into a worm dragon, which was equivalent to a high-level life form, he was still extremely weak compared to those theoretically existing life forms. And just as Yi Bei was discussing these issues with the system, the mechanical life forms that had reached the Centaur constellation region suddenly slowed down and stopped. And quote, Megatron, we've arrived at the Centaurs. The planet here is rich in resources, and we only have 10 machines now. When we really face them, we must make sure that we have enough. End quote. A golden mechanical life said in a deep voice. End quote. Of course, we do this every time we go to any planet. But the rate of reproduction is too slow. Let's change it to something else. First, we control the 100 planets at the edge, gather all the metals inside with the Allspark, and give them simple life. End quote. The guy who was called Wei Jintian had a huge body and was filled with a domineering aura. When he finished speaking, Chi-Chi, a distorted space appeared in front of him. Then, glowing crystals appeared from within. This distorted space was clearly space storage technology. And that crystal, it was the legendary Allspark. At this moment, Yi Bei was also observing all of this through his mental power domain, and he was greatly shocked. The civilizations of the past had implanted culture and concepts into the creatures on Earth. It seemed that they were all very real. This was completely like the characters and energy storage devices in Transformers. The only difference was that in the process of implanting the culture, those creatures deliberately weakened their own strength by a lot. The real them were obviously stronger. Moreover, they didn't have any conflicts or the possibility of protecting the Earthlings. There had never been so-called peace between races. Good. We'll first use the Allspark to awaken the metal, then we'll each give birth to an automaton life form. We'll keep reproducing along the way, and by the time we reach the core region, we'll have at least 10 billion. The golden mechanical life suggested again. Sure, but remember to take back the Allspark. All right, after the conversation, the crystalline substance that appeared from the distorted space was shot out by the mechanical life forms toward the surrounding planets. Each crystalline substance that landed on a planet immediately caused an extremely terrifying tremor. Walala, the planets seemed to be shaking. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. The metallic materials within the crystal, under the energy radiation of the crystal, actually spilled out towards the surface of the planet. In the end, under Yi Bei's shocked gaze, the metal that flowed out of his body began to transform into the appearance of the soldiers of the machinery race, one by one, without the need for any special means. There was even a certain level of intelligence that appeared on their bodies. End quote. This method of creating life is too crazy, isn't it? When he saw this, Yi Bei couldn't help but exclaim in shock, Walala. All the planets that the Allspark arrived on started to shake. Countless metals were automatically separated from the planet. In a short moment, tens of millions of mechanical lives were created. After the appearance of those mechanical lives, they didn't need any orders. They were fighting and devouring each other. Some of the weaker defective products died. Some of the more powerful ones continued to battle and became even stronger. Furthermore, the defeated mechanical life would be immediately devoured by the powerful mechanical life. In less than an hour, he had used this method. The 100 planets implanted with the Allspark had given birth to nearly 500 million super-powerful mechanical lives, and this number was still increasing with every minute and second. Is this their technology? Yi Bei couldn't help but exclaim in shock. The crystal they used is called the Allspark. It's actually a high-tech and precise instrument. It can induce the evolution of metal and give it life. It's not hard to understand. To the automaton race, metal is actually their body. They only need to use technology to give life to metal. If the technology of carbon-based life reaches a certain level, it can also do this. As long as there's enough water and other materials, they can mass-produce life. The system explained. What an incredible technique. Yi Bei sighed with emotion. Under his mind power domain, he could clearly see that there were only 10 creatures from the mechanical race in the depths of the universe. But now, after they entered the Centaur constellation and took control of 100 planets at will, they had created nearly 1 billion life forms. This way of increasing the number was on a completely different level compared to the primitive reproduction of the snake civilization. It seems that the snake tribe civilization is really in danger this time. However, it's also an opportunity. If we devour those mechanical lives, can the creatures of our snake civilization also use those metals, or even make metal armor appear on the surface of our bodies? Yi-Bei continued to ask, and quote, of course, under the host's current domain, all mutated beasts have the ability to devour without limit. They can convert any material. The same goes for devouring metal. End quote, the system replied. Okay, I got it. In the forest of death, Yi-Bei said as he sat in the tree cocoon, although he was shocked. However, while he was thinking about this, he had also secretly analyzed the creatures of the snake civilization. Perhaps the mechanical life form was very abnormal and powerful. But the creatures of the snake tribe civilization were not weak either. Infinite devouring. Any material could be instantly transformed into energy. As long as the core was not damaged, it could recover in an instant by devouring energy. Such a terrifying ability was also a nightmare for countless civilizations. Moreover, they could also share Yi-Bei's abilities. All living beings could spew terrifying flames from their mouths, and even their eyes could shoot laser beams. Moreover, with the current technological level of the snake tribe civilization, it was not difficult to mass-produce living creatures. At this thought, Yi-Bei had a very interesting idea. And NBSB, whoosh. He immediately expanded his spiritual power domain. End quote. Caesar, Golden Lion, listen up. There are other creatures that have entered the Centaur constellation. They're from the machinery race. However, don't be afraid. During this period, my mind power domain will cover the entire Centaur constellation. All living creatures will receive the abilities that I have bestowed. Since those mechanical lives are here, if they want to start a war, don't hold back. Just devour as many as you can. End quote. The mind power domain transformed into a voice and resounded in the minds of all the apostles. The apostles who were in a meeting. When they heard Yi-Bei's voice, they were all stunned. Mechanical life? The legendary mechanical life was going to invade the centaurs? How long has it been? But he was shocked. At that moment, a terrifying fighting spirit burst out from their bodies. Yes, King. Don't worry. If those creatures really come, even if they're robots, we'll treat them as food. Our snake tribe civilization has never lost. End quote. I've long heard that the technological level of the mechanical life forms is very high. If they take the initiative to come over this time, if our snake civilization can obtain their technology, we will be much stronger in a short period of time. End quote. End quote. Let them know the power of the snake tribe civilization. End quote. End quote. King, I'll make the arrangements immediately. With the help of the three-body life form, we'll definitely win. End quote. After hearing Yi-Bei's words, the apostles said one after another. The battle intent on his body was boiling. After so many battles, even in their hearts, these fellows were already eager to fight. After all, the resources obtained after each war were extremely rich. End quote. Very good. I'll leave the rest to you. I'll probably be back in about 2 months. Also, the snake civilization is developing very well now. All of you have contributed greatly. End quote. Yi-Bei continued. These words definitely came from the deepest part of his heart. Back when he had transformed from a human into a python, the earth was still in the era of nations. It was so weak. How long had it been? Even though the Milky Way was destroyed. However, the creatures on Earth had already reached the pace of dominating the universe. In just a few years, he had completed some technology that humans had not been able to complete for thousands of years. In any case, Yi-Bei felt that only the current civilization of the snake tribe could be considered an orthodox civilization on Earth. Moreover, as time passed, it would only become more and more powerful and terrifying. After giving his instructions to the apostles, Yi-Bei once again began to observe the changes in his body. It had been 2 months since the beginning of the evolution. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. In the beginning, Yi Bei's body kept growing, and at one point, he even reached 100,000 meters tall, bursting the tree cocoons in the forest of death millions of times. However, on the 60th day, Yi Bei was shocked to discover that his body had stopped growing and then began to change in reverse. During the process of the change, Yi Bei could clearly feel the energy in his body being compressed at an insane rate. System, what's going on? After discovering this change, Yi Bei actually had a rough idea of what was going on. However, he still wanted to confirm it with the system. Only then would he be completely at ease. After Yi Bei asked this question, the system didn't waste any time and answered him decisively. Host, to a certain extent, evolution isn't about the bigger the body, the better. The strength of one's strength is related to the strength and quality of one's body. However, his combat power is very weak because his body is too big, which affects his mobility. The system replied, "That's not necessarily true. System, the universe is too vast and endless. With the existence of three body life forms, there will naturally be real giant beasts of the starry sky. For example, in front of those giant beasts of the starry sky, planets are about the size of candy." Yi Bei was very serious. To be honest, the existence of a three-body life form had given him a great shock. It made him realize that there were definitely larger life forms in the universe, and even planets were like toys or beads in front of them. Host, your current creature level is still very low. The strongest in the universe is level 30. The giant starry sky beast does exist, but it is not in this low universe, so you don't need to think about such an imaginary enemy for the time being. And quote, that is to say, when the mass reaches a certain level, the body will still become bigger? Right. After asking this, Yi Bei had a rough idea of his situation. It wasn't a good thing to have a bigger body. If it was too big and the quality wasn't equal, it would only cause a slower reaction. After confirming that this was normal, Yi Bei relaxed and continued to enjoy the refreshing feeling of evolving. The four claws on its abdomen had completely formed. The color of his body was a mixture of blue and dark red, forming an extremely special appearance. The aura around him increased madly. Even now, Yi Bei had a feeling that if he wanted to, he could blow up a planet with a casual breath. He didn't even know how strong he was now. Moreover, he could feel that his body was constantly releasing the dignity of a higher race. This kind of majesty was extremely strange and could not be described with words. Time continued to pass by. On the 65th day, Yi Bei's body length had regressed to 50,000 meters, but the strength and explosive power in his body had increased by more than 10 times. On the 70th day, Yi Bei's body had regressed to a height of 10,000 meters. The surface of its body seemed to be covered with a layer of hard armor. In the lightless cocoon, it could actually emit a dim light. The light even carried a terrifying power. If weaker creatures saw it, they might be killed by the dim light. On the 75th day, Yi Bei felt that he had completely transformed. The blood flowing in his body turned golden. Every gene in his blood carried a powerful force. In his body, the gene chain became more and more complete. The chains even gave Yi Bei the illusion that, no matter how much strength he used, he wouldn't be able to break them in the slightest. The 80th day, the 81st day, on the 90th day, 3 months had passed. Walala. In the forest of death, the living trees that were constantly regenerating were all shaking madly. A violent aura was constantly spreading from the cocoons. I didn't expect the evolution to be so fast. Inside the tree cocoon, Yi Bei's eyes lit up. After 90 days, he could feel that his body was gradually recovering. Every move he made had the power to destroy the world. He couldn't help but mutter. At the same time, the system's voice rang out in Yi Bei's mind. Having evolved many times in the past, Yi Bei was already very indifferent to this kind of sound. However, after hearing it now, he couldn't help but widen his eyes, and his eyes were filled with excitement and agitation. End quote. Congratulations to the host for successfully evolving into a WYRM and becoming a level 15 creature. All aspects of your strength have greatly improved. The host can check the specific data by himself. End quote. The system's voice was very simple. Walalala. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Bei's body completely recovered. The tree cocoon around his body exploded. The wood shavings were mixed with berserk energy, and they instantly shattered all the living plants that had emerged from the soil of the Forest of Death. Speaking of which, the living plants in the Forest of Death were also in a miserable state. Almost every time Yi Bei completed his evolution, they would suffer a devastating blow. Of course, from another perspective, these living plants were also extremely lucky. After Yi Bei's evolution, the terrifying energy storm he produced was extremely powerful. For living plants, even if the exposed vines were all crushed, as long as the roots were still there, they could still grow quickly. And every time they grew again, they could perfectly absorb the nutrients in the Forest of Death and become stronger. This time, after Yi Bei finished his evolution, his body landed on the ground of the Forest of Death. And NBSB, whoosh. He released his spiritual power domain. He could clearly see that tens of billions of mechanical life forms had surrounded a large number of three-body life forms. As for the mutated beasts, they were all driving all kinds of warships, ready to fight at any time. Moreover, Yi Bei could also sense the aura of the space snake outside the centaurs. Those people were all hiding in the dark, waiting for the best opportunity to fight. It's not too late. Looks like this time, I'll be able to fight the automaton race head-on. I thought they were strong before, but now, they're just SOSO. A level 12 life form. I'm level 15 now. As for your body's data, we'll go out now and use the automaton race to test it. Chi. Yi Bei flicked his tongue. Whoosh. As he spoke, a distorted space appeared in front of him, and his powerful body was gradually sucked into it. Centaurs. 3 months passed by in the blink of an eye. The snake tribe civilization had developed at an extremely fast speed in the past 3 months. All the planets in the fragment space were filled with various resources, and almost all the living creatures were extremely rich. In such an environment, the number of mutated beasts had tripled in just 3 months. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. The total number had reached a terrifying 300 billion. Moreover, those space fragments had all expanded a lot. Now, almost every different species had their own planet, and the large space fragments had opened up channels, allowing different creatures to freely travel and trade. Originally, everything was thriving. However, when the mechanical life forms appeared in the centaurs, this prosperous atmosphere was instantly destroyed. All the apostles gathered again, and the atmosphere was tense. Centaurs, TriStar. This was a giant planet that was directly modified by three-body life forms. The basic facilities were extremely complete. In one of the giant buildings, the upper echelons of the entire snake civilization, as well as the apostles, were all gathered. However, the atmosphere was extremely quiet. Who? Only the sound of breathing could be heard from time to time. After a long time, Caesar walked to a podium in the building. His voice was a little hoarse, and in the depths of his eyes, there was a majestic, killing intent. And quote, "Everyone, we have just received news that the snake civilization has been targeted by the machinery race. Recently, they have been occupying the edge of the Centaur constellation and have devoured nearly 1,000 planets. They have also created more than 50 billion mechanical lives. Most importantly, when they were doing this, they used technological means to hide their tracks. They only revealed themselves now. They have already surrounded the entire Centaur constellation. The army will charge over at any moment." Caesar's voice was hoarse. Walalala. As soon as he finished speaking, the quiet building immediately burst into a crashing sound. Automaton race. End quote. The civilization that is on the same level as the Zerg race? Damn it, why are we being targeted by them? What do we do next? End quote. Calm down, everyone. Our snake tribe civilization has been developing very quickly during this period of time. The combat power of every living creature has increased unprecedentedly. A mere machine race is nothing. Moreover, if we devour them, we can obtain incomparably powerful strength. This might be a good thing. End quote. End quote. Yes. I suggest declaring war and taking the initiative to attack. End quote. The leaders of the snake tribe civilization and the major races expressed their opinions one after another. In the beginning, they were still a little worried. And when a leader proposed the benefits, everyone quickly came to an agreement. They all decided to take the initiative to attack the mechanical life. The result of this discussion was completely unexpected by Caesar. When he was talking just now, he was still thinking about whether to prepare a battle plan. Now, he found that he had been thinking too much. All right, everyone quiet down. This war is unavoidable. We're going to discuss the weaknesses of the mechanical life forms. When the real war starts, we can defeat them at the first opportunity. Caesar said seriously. On the other side, in the depths of the universe, and NBSB, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless mechanical life forms streaked through the vacuum. They were densely packed together like locusts. Every mechanical life exuded a cold aura. Among these machines, the first 10 mechanical life forms were also quickly communicating. End quote. We've delayed for a long time this time. There are too few pure metal planets in the Centaur constellation, and only a portion of the metal can be extracted from each planet. However, we've still created an army of machines, and their intelligence has been greatly improved. Every mechanical life is implanted with the information of automatic reproduction. If they're injured or killed in battle, they'll be immediately devoured by the surrounding mechanical lives, and a new one will be replicated. End quote. Wei Jintian's voice was cold. Now, the number of mechanical lives has reached 58.9 billion. We're still 1 light year away from the creatures in the Centaur constellation. However, at our current speed, if we go at full speed and use a small wormhole, it will only take an hour. Everyone, prepare for battle. The golden robot growled. There's one more thing you must remember. The genes of these creatures are very important. They can devour and evolve without limit. The main goal this time is to obtain their genes and more information. This is the foundation of our automaton race. Enter the comment. All automaton life forms that have acquired the memories of these beings, listen up. The moment you acquire the genes, immediately store them and don't continue fighting. You must immediately retreat and bring the genes back to the mother planet. Analyze the data on the spot and send it back. Yes. All right. These mechanical life forms quickly reached an agreement. Buzz. Buzz. Soon after, under Wei Jintian's lead, they continued to perform space jumps and small wormholes as they advanced. And in the process, every time they discovered a planet, they would extract the metal from it at their fastest speed. Every minute and every second, the number of troops of the machine race army increased crazily. The cold aura surrounded the entire Centaur constellation, while Caesar and the mutated beasts were having a meeting. At this moment, the three-body creatures were the most terrified. Damn, we've been invaded by the automaton race. What do they want? Why did you come to our side? After my location was exposed, I knew this day would come. I just didn't expect them to come so quickly. Damn automaton race, we can't let them get close. End quote. Prepare the energy. Once you're in attack range, fire immediately. End quote. End quote. Right. Quickly tell this news to the snake civilization and let them attack. Their combat power is also very strong. They might be able to eat all those mechanical lives. End quote. End quote. The upper echelons of the snake civilization are having a meeting, and they're discussing this matter. End quote. The light membrane on the surface of the three-body life forms kept on throbbing. Countless runes appeared on it, forming a sound that was transmitted through the centaurs. Swish, swish, swish. Some of the three-body creatures near the edge of the centaurs were the first to collide with the machinery race. In just an instant, the battle began. In the pitch-black universe, the three-body life forms were frantically shooting out all sorts of terrifying light beams. Incomparably violent energy was spreading in this universe. Boom, boom, boom. The explosions and flashes of light were even more intense than the previous battle between the Snake Tribe civilization and the three-bodied civilization. At this moment, no living being noticed that cracks had suddenly appeared in the void. Crack, crack. The cracks continued to increase, and the cracking sounds continued. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Who? At the same time, an extremely terrifying aura continued to gush out from the cracks. However, as soon as the aura gushed out, it instantly dissipated and returned to calmness. The shaking here did not attract the slightest attention in the Centaur constellation. After the crack, a terrifying flood dragon was floating in the void. His eyes were sharp, as if everything in his eyes was vast. Yi-Bei sat quietly in the air. He retracted all of his aura. After using his shape-shifting ability, his body was only 3 meters long. There were 4 legs on its abdomen, and the melon seeds on them were very sharp. Just like that, he simply sat there, his eyes dark. Even though he had completely retracted his aura and his body was only 3 meters long, he still exuded an invincible aura. And quote, "Looks like I can still make it in time." The machinery race and the snake race civilization haven't really clashed yet. It's only a small conflict at the edge of the Centaur constellation. I'll evolve into a dragon today and test my strength on those mechanical lives. Of course, I'll also have to see how strong the snake race is. End quote. Roar. When Yi-Bei spoke now, he didn't need to stick out his tongue. When he opened his mouth, he could immediately let out a low growl. Crack, crack. As the roar rang out, the space around Yi-Bei began to shatter madly. This terrifying power was many times stronger than the WYRM that had awakened in the centaurs. And quote, "This power is really good. I feel like I can tear the universe apart with just a little force." End quote. Yi-Bei continued. Crack. In fact, he was indeed capable of tearing the universe apart at this time. After he had locked onto the location of Caesar and the others through his spiritual power domain. With a simple swipe of its claws, it shattered the space. Then, without any hesitation, Yi-Bei's body burrowed into the void. Without using any technology, he used his physical body to perform a spatial jump. Centaurs, on a 3-bodied being. In the huge building, Caesar, Wang Wen, Golden Lion, and countless other mutated beasts were still discussing. In the center of the building, there was a holographic projection. And NBSB, Hong Long Long. And NBSB, whoosh, whoosh. In those projections, the battle was extremely intense, with explosions and flashes of light constantly. Under the holographic projection, it was clearly presented in front of every living being. And quote, "The machines can't be killed. Even if their bodies are vaporized, the metal elements are still in space and won't disappear. Furthermore, those elements will be devoured by other machines. With such a huge amount, they can recover in less than 0.01 seconds. During this process, they can even transform the energy of the attacks launched by the 3-body life forms into kinetic energy for their bodies." End quote. A mutated monkey replaced Caesar and stood in front of the stage, watching the holographic projection and explaining at the same time. This monkey was extremely intelligent. Through a simple analysis, it had identified the key to the problem. This means that normal weapons or destructive weapons won't cause any harm to them. They ignore all physical attacks. Furthermore, technological methods are ineffective. These automaton life forms don't rely on intelligent programs to survive. They're similar to 3-body life forms. They rapidly accumulate knowledge through memory transmission. However, each individual has their own thoughts. At this time, Caesar added some supplementary information. End quote. "A 3-body life form is no match for those mechanical lives. I suggest that we send some mutated beasts to test the waters first. For example, we can try devouring some mechanical lives." End quote. Chi. Wang Wen flicked his tongue. The only way he could think of now was to directly devour the mechanical life and turn it into a part of his energy. If that was the case, the mechanical life would not be able to recover, right? End quote. "All right, leave this to me. It just so happens that our ant tribe has many worker ants at the edge of the Centaur constellation. Now that a war has broken out, it's too late for them to escape. Rather than being killed by the shockwaves, it's better to try." End quote. The Ant Queen said, Who? As soon as he finished speaking, he spread out his spiritual power. The Queen Ant was in charge of the entire ant tribe. Her mind power might not be very strong, but almost all the ant tribe's life forms released their mind power the moment it spread. The huge amount of mind power spread across the entire Centauri constellation. The speed at which information was transmitted was much faster than technology. The worker ants at the edge of the centaurs, upon receiving the Queen Ant's order, immediately stopped running. Their eyes were all cold. "Devour those guys." End quote. "The Queen Ant has ordered. Everyone, attack together." End quote. All right. They didn't dare to delay. And NBSB, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of them charged towards the machine. Most of the mutated ants didn't even get close before they were blown to pieces by the machine race's concentrated artillery fire. When this scene was transmitted back to the higher-ups of the mutated beasts, all of them were exuding a terrifying killing intent. And quote, "There are too many of them, so we can't get close at all. Moreover, they are very alert, especially their bodies, which can be directly turned into weapons. If we want to get close to them, we must use the super warship and activate absolute defense." End quote. The mutant monkey continued. But after he said that, many of the mutant beast leaders watching the holographic projection exclaimed, "Look, what are these ants doing? They're all standing in a straight line. How crazy. Using the bodies of their comrades to block the attacks of the mechanical lives and buy time for the mutated ants behind to get closer? These mutated ants are too crazy. We're getting close." As the exclamations continued, in the holographic projection, the mutated ant at the back really did block the machine race's attack. One of them even directly charged towards a machine in the air. At this moment, the intelligence system of the snake civilization quickly focused on the main point. The holographic projection was filled with the appearance of the mutated ant. The mutated ant's eyes were extremely determined. When it rushed to the side of the mechanical life, it opened its mouth. Poochie. Without any hesitation, he bit down hard. Did you succeed? The golden lion's hair stood on end and its eyes widened. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. It's bitten. If it really works, then we'll be the absolute nemesis of those mechanical life forms. Furthermore, they'll only become our rich food this time. Wangwen stuck out his tongue. He was also looking forward to it. The threat of the mechanical life army this time was too crazy. If they could find a breakthrough, everything would be easy to handle. Just as all the higher-ups of the mutated beasts were looking forward to this, an accident happened. Boom, boom. When the last surviving mutated ant bit a mechanical life, the scene that the mutated beasts had been waiting for did not happen. This was because all the mutated beasts saw the mutated ant being dismembered by the mechanical life in an instant. Even through the holographic projection screen, one could feel the terrible smell of blood. Bastards, what are they doing? The queen ant trembled when it saw this. Seeing her subjects being treated like this, it would be strange if she, as the queen ant, remained indifferent. End quote. There's something wrong with those mechanical lives. It seems like they intentionally released that mutated ant. What are they trying to do? End quote. That's right. They've already locked onto the mutated ants. Some of the mechanical lives even revealed their flaws on purpose. End quote. Damn. End quote. Continue watching. Those mechanical lives seem to have torn the mutated ant into pieces and preserved its flesh. Could it be that they want to obtain its genes? When he said that, many mutated beasts trembled violently. To the snake race civilization, the genes of all mutated beasts were extremely precious. Countless civilizations were eyeing these genes and wanted to use them for research. And all the mutated beasts in the snake race civilization were aware of this. So, before the previous battle, everyone had already made a secret agreement. The moment they were captured, they would immediately self-destruct and destroy all their genes. They couldn't be captured by the enemy. But now, the mutated ant was unable to react in time, and its body was torn apart by the mechanical life. When the upper echelons of the snake tribe civilization realized what was going on, at this moment, in the depths of the universe, the mechanical life forms that Wei Jintian had brought with him all stopped. End quote. That's great. This monster is a part of the so-called snake civilization. Let's do a genetic analysis on it now. Let's see why they can keep devouring without digestion and maintain their body size at will. End quote. Wei Jintian's voice was filled with excitement. Yes. The machine race beings that had obtained the mutated ant's genes didn't dare to hesitate any longer. They all started to move. Every mechanical life. It was a perfect multifunctional smart device. After getting the meat, they started to analyze it as quickly as possible. But, as time passed, the results of their analysis were not ideal. 3 minutes later, one of the mechanical lives ran in front of Megatron with a puzzled look. End quote. End quote. There's something wrong with this piece of meat. After our analysis, they're completely made up of the most ordinary carbon-based life forms. but there are many metal elements and other mineral elements in their gene chains. But no matter how we analyze it, we can't figure out why they can keep devouring. End quote. Yeah, I ended up like that too. They should be normal carbon-based life forms. End quote. They have a stomach and an intestine, but there are no impurities in them. It's completely unnecessary, which doesn't conform to the law of evolution. End quote. Strange life form. It's not an ordinary carbon-based life form. It's more like a fusion of a carbon-based life form and metal. The analysis of the mechanical life continued. Initially, Wei Jintian and the others still held great hope. However, after hearing the results of these reports, Wei Jintian did not feel good. End quote. Impossible. When we were fighting the three-body life form, we were observing them. During this time, they secretly swallowed a lot of materials. From the monitoring video, they didn't excrete any. All the energy was perfectly converted. How could their genes be so simple? Wei Jintian growled. All the mechanical life forms were confused at this moment. This situation made the higher-ups of the mutated beasts very puzzled. They stopped. What's going on? End quote. If I'm not mistaken, they are analyzing the gene fragments of the mutated ant. End quote. End quote. There shouldn't be any results. We've been analyzing it all this time, but we can't understand some of the abilities that our bodies possess. We've been analyzing it for too long, but we can't come up with a reasonable conclusion. End quote. Morpheus also spoke. When he said this, his eyes were filled with endless doubt. He had been researching on mutated beasts, but the results were not satisfactory. So he guessed. These mechanical life forms must have encountered the same problem. Continue to watch. Continue to wait. End quote. Send out the warships as well. If they continue to approach, we can only start a war. At that time, we can approach them through the warships and wait until we invade their center. They won't attack without permission. After all, it's easy to hurt themselves. End quote. End quote. The battleship is ready. We can take off at any time. End quote. All right. Caesar, Blood Moon, Wang Wen, and the other apostles in the huge building immediately made a decision. Yes. Get ready. Yes. The next second, the entire snake civilization was mobilized. And NBSB, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Super cosmic warships rose from the surface of the three-body life form one after another. The entire process took less than a minute, and tens of millions of them appeared in the universe. This kind of formation looked very terrifying. But, just as the apostles were about to attack the machinery race, Chi, in the space of this huge building, a distorted space suddenly appeared with a sizzling sound. And it appeared right in the middle of the holographic projection. The mutated beasts who were in the middle of a discussion were all stunned when they saw this. Then, their eyes widened with endless fear. A creature that could appear from the void was definitely extremely powerful. Could it be? This place had been locked down long ago, and now the enemy had invaded. Shwa shwa shwa. All of their eyes were looking at the distorted space. The entire building was silent at this moment. There was no other sound other than the sound of space surging. But, just as the atmosphere was about to freeze, Yi Bei's body finally emerged from the distorted space. The first thing that came out was its two front claws. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Then, there was the 3-meter-long body. When he came out, all the leaders of the mutated beasts in the giant building widened their eyes. On the other hand, Golden Lion and Wang Wen's reaction speed was very fast. Your Majesty, is that you? The two of them shouted in a trembling voice. Hoo. In the giant building, all the leaders of the mutated beasts were taking deep breaths. Yi Bei had already transformed into a flood dragon. His body shrunk to 3 meters in height. However, when he appeared from the distorted space, he still gave all the mutated beasts an inexplicable pressure. In particular, Golden Lion and Wang Wen's shouts made even more beasts tremble. At this moment, Yi Bei's entire body was a mix of gold and light blue. Under the illumination of the silvery white light inside the building, it exuded an extremely powerful aura. My king, is that you? King. After the mutated beasts came to their senses, they looked at Yi Bei, their voices filled with doubt. After all, Yi-Bei's current appearance had changed too much compared to his previous appearance. It wasn't just his appearance that had completely changed. It even grew claws. This appearance was almost the same as the terrifying worm dragon that had appeared in the centaurs. Of course, if he had to say it. The flood dragon's body looked smoother, more perfect, and more powerful. "It's me. Everyone, I'm back. Chi-Chi," Yi-Bei said calmly. The voice resounded in the minds of all the mutated beasts. At the same time, he released some aura from his body. That aura was familiar to all the mutated beasts. "It really is the king. That's great. King, is this your new body? So strong. It's definitely countless times stronger than before." The mutant beasts were all in an uproar. Roar, roar. After Golden Lion received confirmation, it let out a series of roars and strode forward, quickly running in Yi-Bei's direction. Wang Wan, Gu Yu, Blood Moon, Caesar, the Ant Queen. Soon, all the apostles had gathered around Yi-Bei. They sized up Yi-Bei's new body, their eyes full of confusion, but also more of awe. "My king, is this the new body after the evolution?" Chi-Chi. Wang Wan flicked his tongue and wanted to continue speaking. However, before she could finish speaking, Yi-Bei interrupted her, and quote, "I know what you're going to say. My current body is that of a flood dragon. The gene level of a snake is still a little low. Moreover, from a certain perspective, the evolution of the snake race's genes is in the direction of a true dragon. If there's a chance in the future, the entire snake race will become flood dragons." End quote. "Yes, the king," Wang Wan replied excitedly. "My king, what about us? My king, what is the level of your power now? This body is too perfect. Walala." In the giant building, the other leaders of the mutated beasts couldn't help but praise. But soon, another voice was heard. End quote. "Your Majesty, the Centaur constellation is now surrounded by the machinery race. You must think of a way. Those guys can't be killed at all. However, if Your Majesty uses the battleship that dealt with the WRM dragon before, we will definitely win." End quote. It was a mutated ant that said this. When he had seen the ant tribe sacrificed through the holographic projection, he had been extremely furious. So, this time, after confirming that it was Yi-Bei, he shouted without hesitation. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire giant building fell silent again. Yes, right now, they were discussing how to deal with the automaton race. However, just as Yi-Bei was about to speak, the holographic projection in the giant building suddenly enlarged a mechanical life. The object of the magnification was none other than the mechanical life Wei Jintian, who had led the group to the centaurs. End quote. It seems that these mechanical lives have long discovered our existence. Let's see what they have to say first. End quote. Yi-Bei opened his mouth and watched quietly. After completing his evolution this time, he had absolute confidence in his own strength. If he were to really face those mechanical lives, he would not even need the mutated beasts to fight. He would be able to transform his body to its maximum form and easily kill them all. When the holographic projection changed, the first thing that came out was a sizzling sound. Soon after, Wei Jintian's voice could be heard. "Everyone, the snake civilization from the Milky Way. It's a pleasure to meet you." End quote. "Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you some facts. Because of some of your unkind actions, you invaded the Centaur constellation and broke the peace of the universe. Our mechanical civilization has always advocated peaceful coexistence and has always resisted such acts of war. So this time, we will declare war on behalf of the tri-body civilization that you have defeated, to regain sovereignty for the tri-body civilization." End quote. In the holographic projection, the mechanical life said in a righteous manner. In the giant building, the higher-ups of the mutated beasts were all stunned when they heard this. Even Yi-Bei, who was extremely serious, was dumbfounded when he heard this. F***CK. In the past, Yi-Bei had always thought that the higher-ups of human civilization were already shameless enough. He never expected that an advanced race like the machinery race would be even more shameless. Oh, no, their bodies were made of metal. In a sense, they were just cold metal. They had no face at all. Oh, in other words, you're determined to start a war. Yi-Bei said in a cold voice. End quote. Of course not. Now, you have two choices. First, leave the Centaur constellation and return with our machinery race. We will arrange a star field for you to live in and accept 100 years of imprisonment. Second, hand over your true genes. For example, take them. Why can you endlessly devour this information? You must also provide it. As a deal, we may give up on your judgment. Third, war. Wei Jintian's aura was not weak at all. Moreover, he didn't even hold back at all. He was simply displaying his shamelessness to the extreme. Walalala. At this time, Caesar, Golden Lion, and the higher-ups of the mutated beasts in the giant building finally couldn't hold it in anymore, and all of them exploded. You're looking for death. Let's fight. I'm not afraid of you. Damn machine race, who do you think you are? Do you need to participate in the battle between civilizations in the universe? And quote, what a joke. You guys are so righteous. Have you asked the three-body life form? Walalala. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. The sounds were too mixed and converged into one. Without a doubt, the machine race's Wei Jintian had successfully incited the rage of all the mutated beasts. At this moment, Yibei was also furious. The automaton race. I've always heard that they're very strong. If you want our genes, sure, come get them yourself. Right, we also want your technology. And your bodies as food. Yibei said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire Centaur's constellation was instantly shrouded in the shadow of war.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.